Hello there. Welcome to Marriage Unmasked. Today, we are answering a question that is something that I think a lot of Christian married people wrestle with. And that is, well, we waited for marriage, so why is sex still so hard for us? And that is a tough question. It's difficult to wrestle with that as a married couple because you want your sex life to be really fantastic and you have expectations around that. And so we're going to explore that today. We're going to explore some of those expectations that you might have and understand why we might be asking that question and get into God's design for sexuality for us, how God designed it to be both emotionally and physically for us in our marriage.
And we're going to talk about some of the barriers that get in the way of us really enjoying all the beauty that He has for us in it. Some of those underlying messages that we were taught growing up that led to some of these expectations and disappointments. And then we're going to talk about how to rebuild safety and connection in the bedroom so that you can really enjoy all the goodness God has for you with sex. And I think one place to start is really this gap where you were told, just wait for marriage, do not have sex before marriage, just wait and it'll be amazing. That was kind of the message that I got was like, oh, it's going to be so good, but you got to wait for it. And I remember, I actually remember asking God, I remember specifically praying to God, and I was like, please don't have me die before I can get married and have sex. Because I was seriously looking forward to it so much because I had this big idea in my head, this is going to be so amazing. And I just gotta wait and I just gotta get there and then it's just gonna.
And that's really funny because sex was such a taboo topic in my house. Like it wasn't like an expectation. It was just kind of not even talked about. And so to me, nothing was setting me up for this, like, hey, this is going to be wonderful. It's just this thing that you'll be doing when you're in marriage. So to me, it was just like, okay, like it was almost like a mystery around it somewhat.
Yeah, interesting.
It was, you get more information from society then and from like some of that.
Yeah, I think too, you get messages from church though too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like youth groups,
Oh, yeah.
Different things like that. And you get messages. I know our kids have even gotten some messages. We want their primary messages to be from us.
Yeah.
And so I think it is so important to talk about it. But the other thing that's really missing, like you hear, just wait and it'll be amazing. But who's talking about when there's disconnection and what to do about it? Who's talking about how to communicate about sex and how to talk about your needs, your desires? I mean, who's talking about the pleasure and if you're not getting pleasure and what could be coming up there or how you learn and grow? No one's really talking about all this important stuff that actually is needed to enjoy sex. Like it doesn't just happen. It doesn't just oh, okay, we are now married and now sex is awesome. It just doesn't. I mean, if that has happened for you, yay. Awesome. And sex has been really awesome for Ed and I, but it's also been really, really painful. I think it's led to some of the most painful things for us in our marriage just because it is so intimate. It is so deeply vulnerable and personal. We didn't necessarily know how to talk about it, how to express our needs, what we should be feeling or shouldn't be feeling. We had to learn and grow together, which is, there's a beautiful thing to that, right? I just remember my mom even telling me I was trying to ask her questions and she was like, well, you'll just figure it out together. And I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds great. But in reality, it was
the figuring out can be a challenge.
yeah. And so I think it is so important to just let's talk about it. And that's what we're here to do on this podcast too, is we want to just, okay, let's just be real about it. Let's just be honest about it. Let's talk about some of these barriers and let's move through it and rebuild.
Absolutely. One of the messages that I received growing up, like before I was married, was that sex is just something that you have to avoid. Before marriage, it's sinful. So you want to keep your mind pure, not think about or talk about sex. And there wasn't a whole lot of open conversation anyway at all about it in my family. I mean, there was some sort of almost like assumed things and talked about it in a roundabout way, but not a very direct, like open, clear communication about it. And so, I grew up with this impression that sex was almost sort of like a shameful thing, a hidden thing, that yes, it was okay for married people to do it, but even then it was sort of like this mysterious thing. And so, like, if you come into it with that sort of mindset, then how are you supposed to just flip a switch and go from, okay, this thing that was a sin, this thing that I wasn't ever supposed to do, think about, talk about,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to switch into all of a sudden this is this amazing gift and this is this wonderful thing to just do and to enjoy with your spouse? That's a hard switch to make. And so I think that's true for a lot of Christian couples too. They've had that message for so long, and now all of a sudden it's supposed to be, all right, now you're free to do it. Okay, now what? Like, what does that mean? And it isn't necessarily, even then in marriage, it's not necessarily seen as this joy and this celebration, because I think some of that shame and some of that old viewpoint gets carried into the marriage and can create issues in the sexual experience between husband and wife. And this is definitely an issue that I think a lot of men struggle with, a lot of husbands struggle with, is sort of the shame aspect of sex, especially when it doesn't look or feel like how they expect it or how they think it should. Like, again, you get like the Hollywood version, and you
Yeah.
get all this stuff, and it's supposed to be this amazing thing, and you're going to bring all this pleasure to her, and you're going to feel this amazing connection, and it's like this awesome exciting thing to do. And yet the reality sometimes isn't that. And so then you start to do that comparison, and you start to think that way, and you can have a lot of shame around that. Like, I'm just not performing very well, I'm not doing a good enough job with sex. She's not enjoying this like I think she should be enjoying it. And so then there can be a lot of shame and a lot of fear around it, instead of looking at it as this gift, as this blessing, as this joy, because it didn't look like how you imagined it would look like.
And from the couples that we've coached where there's issues here in their sexual relationship, I also wonder if men feel like, and not saying this can't be true for women, but this is more what I've seen is men are having this desire to get pleasure, right? And they're kind of putting that off, or maybe they are exploring that a little bit and maybe shaming themselves for it. And
Yeah.
then they think that when they get married, okay, now I get to enjoy all this pleasure with sex, and as much as I want, or it's going to be so great and I can have that release. And then when their wife isn't necessarily on the same timetable as they are, or
Yeah.
wants to have it as much as they are,
Yeah.
or isn't, right, then it can lead to a lot of issues. Like we've seen porn and all kinds of things where this can get really painful. And then I think a lot of times wives feel this pressure to perform, right? Well, my husband wants to have sex and I feel like I need to do it. And I work with a lot of wives who feel like it's their duty, right? I need to do this. And then they actually have so much hurt and resentment because they've been doing it, even though their hearts aren't in it. Maybe they're even getting some pleasure. But their hearts aren't in it. They're not feeling cherished and desired, and their needs in it are not getting met. Just because a woman orgasms doesn't mean that she is feeling fulfilled, that she is feeling that connection. That's not always the case, and that's why this can be so painful, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of layers to it. We're so individual. We have individual needs and desires and things that give us pleasure. And another thing I know wives we deal with is just this confusion then with the desire, and like how it might change. So you might desire your husband sometimes and like, okay, yeah, I'm open to that. But then sometimes you're like, I don't want to have sex at all. I'm working with a lot of wives inside Restored that actually aren't even attracted to their husbands anymore, and yet they feel this pressure from their husbands to open up, right, open up their bodies when they're not even feeling open to their husbands emotionally, right? They have been hurt and they've closed off their hearts, and that also leads to you wanting to close off your body.
Yeah.
And yet they still feel this pressure, or maybe they're shaming themselves now. Why don't I feel attracted to my husband? Why don't I desire him?
Well, and some of the messaging that churches and like religious leaders have given have been, well, this is your duty. It is presented that way. That isn't very helpful either, because the wife isn't necessarily getting what she needs out of that experience then.
Yeah, and I know a lot of marriage books, even a lot of marriage books that Christians read, there is that undertone and those words where it's like, yes, this is what your husband needs. This is his number one need. And that puts this, even if it's not specifically said, that puts this pressure on a wife. Oh my goodness, this is my husband's number one need. I need to just do it, even if I don't want to. And that actually can happen for wives, where wives actually their desire is higher. And then that can also happen where a wife is like, what's wrong with me? I want it more than my husband. Like, there's so much in there. And then for wives too, it's like hormones, hello, right? Hormone changes, having babies, all the things. Every single month, your hormones are changing up and down and navigating that and still trying to, prioritize intimacy and sex. This just can be a really big topic. And it's not all cut and dried that when you get married, okay, you're just going to love sex. It's going to be so amazing. There's just so much more to it than that. And God does say, right? Like God does say, this is a beautiful gift. It is and it is absolutely right. Like we agree, like this is one of our favorite things to do. It's very connecting. It brings that deep connection for us again.
Yes, it's that knowing, it's that one flesh connection that God talks about in Genesis, that they knew each other. That's the euphemism for sexual relations, is that they know, they have this deep knowing of each other, and they become one flesh. And then also the Song of Solomon, that whole book is really about sexual pleasure and the joy and the celebration that a couple has between each other, and there's even sexual euphemisms in there talking about parts of your body and whatnot. And so it's a joy-filled book that just talks about the delight. And delight is a word that comes up a lot. My husband delights in me, and my beloved delights in me, and I delight in him. God wants there to be this delightfulness and this joy and this celebration in having sex.
And we want that for you too. And we do believe that when you're married, you get to enjoy that. But there are so many things that can become barriers, and that's what we want to explore next, is what are some of those barriers that get in the way of you both delighting in each other.
Yeah. One of them is really emotional safety and connection. I often like to think of it this way: the man wants to get emotionally connected through the physical act of having sex, and a wife needs the emotional connection in order to enjoy the physical act of having sex. And so that is a tension there that has to be understood and explored and talked about, because a wife, if she doesn't feel very safe in the relationship, she doesn't have that emotional safety, then she's not going to really want her body to be open to her husband in a sexual way. Like that's a very vulnerable place. And a man wants that connection too. He wants to be connected to his wife. And we just did a whole podcast about disconnection last week. And if that kind of disconnection is going on, then there's no safety in the relationship. You're wanting to avoid each other rather than come together and do any kind of intensely vulnerable things like having sex with each other. Those can be huge barriers to really enjoying sex in your relationship.
And sometimes though, sex can be connecting, right? Like I know we've had like times where we're very disconnected, but then I don't know what, I don't really know what brings it on, but all of a sudden we're like, yes, we want each other and we're going to reconnect through sex.
Yes. It doesn't necessarily solve the issue that caused the disconnection, but it does get you connected again, or it can get you connected again, and then have the right heart to solve that issue. Because you're connected again. So it can work that way as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another barrier, and I think it goes for both men and women, although maybe a little bit more for women, I'm not sure, but is the like whole body image and disconnect from your body shame that can kind of come into play. I was raised in a time where there's kind of that purity culture and the messaging of like, especially for women, like cover that up. You shouldn't be showing that. That is a temptation. That is wrong to show. You need to have, your clothes this length down. You need to cover that up. So there's this almost this underlying idea again, even if it's not said straight out, that these things should be hidden and there's some shame that then ends up around your body, your beautiful, amazing, incredible body, and your husband is going to delight in it. But you have this idea now where like, oh, I should be covering that up. And now all of a sudden you get married and you're having sex and you're just supposed to open it up for your husband. And it's like, whoa, it can lead to embarrassment. I remember us trying some different things and during sex, I just was very shy or very uncomfortable, very embarrassed. Like this part of me, nobody should be seeing, no one should be touching. No. And so I had to really move past that and realize, okay, this is a beautiful part of me and my husband enjoys it and I can enjoy when he's enjoying it, right?
That's one of the reasons why a man really needs to, create an atmosphere where his wife feels very safe so that those kind of things can be worked through. Because it is such a vulnerable thing. You're exposing parts of your body that you wouldn't normally expose, and you're being so intimate. A man really has to have a safe environment for that to happen. The emotional safety is just huge.
Even with like even sexual thoughts, right? There could be that shame there. And so it's like, how do we talk to each other about sex or even during sex? I know for me, I maybe am thinking some things, but I have a hard time expressing them because it just feels like I shouldn't be talking about it, or I don't know how to talk about it, or I don't know what feels good or how to tell him. And experiencing some of these thoughts or this confusion around how to communicate your needs, your desires, that can actually lead to you kind of becoming numb. I don't know what to do. I feel ashamed. And so, like, I'm just going to numb out. I mean, I know there's a lot of wives who just kind of numb out during sex because they're thinking of it this as a duty. They don't really feel comfortable. They're maybe just uncomfortable with their body in this stage or having some shame about their body and how it looks and how it feels, and their hormones are all over the place. And so sometimes wives can even end up just kind of going numb. And that just breaks my heart because it's meant to be such an enjoyable connecting thing for you. And so that can be a big barrier.
Yeah, and another barrier can be stress. Like on both sides, you bring work stress back home, or there's stress in the home. You've got kids, you've got little kids. That can introduce a whole nother realm because if you're in a stress state, it's like a survival mode.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you do anything sexually, it's very hard to relax and be creative and enjoy the moment when you are filled with stress. That's definitely a huge barrier to it. Another one is comparison can be a really difficult thing. And that can come in different ways. I know a lot of guys can struggle with comparison, especially if they've been involved with porn and things like that. They're comparing their wife to an unrealistic standard, and that can be really painful and hard on both sides because now he has this completely unrealistic expectation in his head, and maybe he's not as attracted to his wife because of that, and that is something that's very hard to work through, which is one of the reasons why porn can be so dangerous. And it could be comparison in other ways too. It could be just, buddies talking about experiences or what they do or whatever, and now he's comparing that to their own private experiences and maybe feeling less than, and that can become a barrier as well. And another big one is unresolved conflict. Um, as we kind of touched on already, but like when you are in great pain and emotional disconnection from each other because of conflict, or there's resentment over past conflict, you can even use sex as sort of like a thing to withhold or almost punish the other person with in some ways, or unresolved conflict can just be disconnecting enough and cause that kind of stress and this inability to relax into each other and to want to connect with each other because you're fighting with each other.
I mean, and all these barriers, they can, like you just said, even like it can lead to withholding, or it can lead, because it is such a pleasurable experience, we want to do it, or hopefully you want to do it. But if it's not happening because of some of these barriers, that's what can then lead to porn use or withholding, numbing out, all these other things, maybe even going to somebody else outside the marriage because it really pleasures your body. And when you are struggling with a lot of pain, a lot of unhealed wounds, you want to feel better. you don't want to feel the pain. And so what's one of the quickest ways that we can feel better, right? A sexual release, a sexual experience that brings positive emotions and positive feelings and hormones into your body. And so we want to talk about like how to begin rebuilding, because we don't want you to stay stuck or to just kind of stay in a cycle where you're getting caught up by some of these barriers. So how do we begin rebuilding? The first thing is honestly, I think, being honest. It is actually opening up verbally and sharing some of these feelings that you have, some of the experiences, some of the thoughts and fears, right? If there's disappointments, it's being honest about those, because it does no good if you're disappointed or you're not enjoying it, or you are, you have these hopes and they're, not being met or whatever. If you hold those in and don't express, it's not going to get better, right? And so to share how what's really going on for you without blame, right? Just sharing your experience or sharing your thoughts or feelings without the blame, that can be so helpful in moving forward, moving towards connection, really, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And vulnerability, like that kind of open vulnerability in that kind of conversation with each other, sets the stage for that deeper vulnerability in the sexual experience. That vulnerability needs to be there, that just openness and honesty, like this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm going through. And you have to have that emotional safety between each other so that you can have that conversation even, and to provide that kind of atmosphere. Yeah, I mean, there's some tools and whatnot that you can use to like talk through these things in a healthy way.
I mean, there's so much depth to talk about when it comes to sex and intimacy. In our Healing Your Marriage course, there's a whole module on sex and intimacy. And along with that, we give a bonus, a whole sheet of questions that are going to help you kind of unearth some of these things that might be going on underneath, and help you to speak about it and share about it in a really easy way. I know that you have to be brave, right, to open up, but as easy as it can be, we give you a whole list of questions that you can ask each other to start that conversation going, and really start to understand each other a little bit better.
Yeah, and that can really set the stage for that safe conversation. When you're intentional about it and you're not just trying to communicate on the fly, it's very helpful. So if you set aside some time, like have a little date night, and here we're going to talk through these things. We're going to actually be intentional about our sexual life right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to figure some things out and get on the same page, and that's super helpful.
Yeah.
Another thing that you can do to start to rebuild and repair the sexual connection is to start to look at sex differently and start to redefine it as a process and not a single act.
Yeah.
As I was mentioning before, like looking at it as a celebration of your connection is so much more powerful than it's just this act that we do sometimes just to get our needs met. This is a holistic thing. If you think about it more as this is just every area of my life, every area of our relationship, this is coming together and we're celebrating that in a physical way together. And so, as we work on some of those other areas, as we work on the process of healing some of the emotional pain, healing our communication, healing all these other aspects of marriage, then sex becomes more of the celebration. This is just a celebration of the union that we share, and this is this beautiful gift that God's given us to celebrate that and to come together and enjoy each other in this amazing, intimate way. And so it's so much better to look at it that way as opposed to just like this single act that we're just going to do once in a while. And another big shift to make is really this shift from this performance mentality to a presence, to being present with each other. And this is something that I struggled with for a long time. And I can remember one time in particular where Cara was really not very interested in sex that night.
She thought I was.
Yeah, she's probably never really closed off to it, but she wasn't giving any like clear signals that this was really on her mind.
Yeah.
And yet I wanted it, so I was initiating some connection and trying to get her in the mood, and I was focused so much on performance in order to get her there. So I was kissing in certain ways, and I'm trying to like do all the different performance based things that I think are what she would want in order to get her in the mood, and that doesn't work. because she wasn't connected to the performance aspects of things. That wasn't exciting to her to just have these physical things happening. What I've learned and what I did better at another occasion was to really stop focusing so much on performance. This isn't some kind of act that I have to put on. I don't have to do this perfectly in order to be good at it. Like, it's so much more powerful to just drop into your body, to drop into being present in the moment and enjoying the sensations of the moment, and being grateful for your wife and just enjoying the smell, enjoying the touch. Like, actually just being fully present in the moment. This energy and this excitement that was much more of a turn on for Kara.
Yeah, I mean, it it's the energy, right? I can't tell you how many times we've struggled with the same concept where Adam is trying to, because that's something that he struggles with in general, is performing, trying to be good enough. And so he's brought that into sex and intimacy as well. And when I get that energy from him, that it's not like an authentic interest in me. It's more of this like, let me try to get you in the mood.
It's like trying to hit the right buttons or something.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
like a machine.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
performing to like hit the right buttons, and then
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this thing happen.
Right.
That's just completely the opposite kind of energy.
Yeah, it
You
is.
need to actually enjoy and celebrate sexual connection.
Yeah, it's like an automatic turn off for me.
Yeah.
Because I can tell the energy is just like fake. I can tell totally differently, like when he wants me. And we had a hard time trying to talk through this issue, which would keep coming up over and over and over again, because I would try to explain to him that like it was the energy that he was bringing, and he just wasn't understanding that, because he just kept thinking performance, 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 and I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And so we had a hard time kind of talking about this, but we eventually figured it out. But yeah, so that is a big part of it for sure, to just be present and just enjoy each other, right? Enjoy each other. And that can only really happen when you are feeling safe with each other, when you're feeling connected. Because if you're not feeling open, right, if your heart is kind of shut off to them because maybe you are struggling with resentment, or you are struggling with deep hurts that are still unhealed, that can absolutely prevent an enjoyable sexual experience, right? Because you aren't fully open to them. You have these thoughts in your head, probably. Maybe you're not even technically thinking about them, but they're stories that you're believing. And they could be preventing you from really actually enjoying this experience, and enjoying your spouse, because you're too busy hurting, right? Your heart is just still hurting. So it's important to address, what are some of the things that might be preventing you from really opening up. One question that might be helpful too, because you want to get curious, right? If you're feeling some disconnect, right, in the marriage, maybe asking the question like, what would make this feel more connecting to you? You can develop that conversation further to maybe uncover some of the things, even for yourself, some personal reflection. This isn't even necessarily something you need to bring to your spouse, right? You don't need to tell them like, well, yeah, remember when you did this? Or for me, it might have been like, there's been so much passivity, passive behavior, that I don't feel safe with you, because I feel like I need to step up and handle everything. And that's not attractive to me. So I'm not actually attracted to you. Right. And I don't want to be intimate with you because you're not attractive, right? That's not necessarily something. I mean, we might need to have a conversation about it, but it's also something that I can really work on myself, right? Something that we work on in Restore. That's my membership for wives, and this is a lot of wives are struggling with this, and so it's something that we talk through, because it can be worked on, it can be healed. You aren't going to be unattracted to your husband forever. You can get that attraction back, absolutely. And Adam and I have, like, there was years and years where, yeah, I actually wasn't really attracted to him. If we were having sex, it was probably more like, a lot of the time, honestly, it was like 3 a.m. Like we woke up.
There was a period of time it was like that.
We weren't like fully awake, and so that's when we had sex. One of us was kind of maybe a little bit in the mood or whatever, and it wasn't because the attraction was missing.
Not nearly as often either.
No, it was random.
Random and rare.
Yeah, random and rare. Yeah. So
kind of vibing with what Kara said, like she was saying I was passive, and I was also having a lot of resentment because she was being critical and hurting me in certain ways that I wasn't dealing with, or was trying to shove down and just like close off my parts of my heart because I was hurt and I was being resentful and I didn't even have words or understand all that. So I was just stuffing all these emotions, and that came out, in resenting her and not necessarily wanting her and not
Yeah.
pursuing her then. So for both men and women, it's really important to get into your heart and to heal those things, that emotional pain that you've experienced for whatever reason throughout the marriage.
Yeah, for sure. And this whole topic of sex and intimacy, God uses this area too because it is such a powerful area in your life. God uses this too to grow your oneness, right? Your connection. He uses it to grow your vulnerability and your openness with each other. And so this can absolutely get better if you're like, yes, we waited for marriage. We did that, and that was obedience. That really was. And God is honored by that.
Yeah.
But also even if it's hard right now, it can get better, and that healing and the learning and the growth, that all matters too, and God is also honored by that. And so it's okay if things aren't always going smoothly in this area.
God is present in the process and the progress that you're making towards that, and he just celebrates that with you, and he wants that for you.
And if this is something that you're like, well, I don't really want to join Restored or Refine because this is such a sensitive area, we do offer couples coaching and individual coaching. This is an area we've talked about with couples. We've coached them through privately, so that private coaching with us can be a really powerful next step. And we're happy to, maybe you could put the link in the show notes for that.
The link for the coaching and also for our Healing Your Marriage course, that is in the show notes. And that is an important resource as well. So maybe you're not wanting to jump in a group, but you want to get the course and go through the module on sex and intimacy and get some coaching to help along the way. That can be really powerful for you.
And don't be afraid to join the groups either, because in Restored, we are talking about attraction, sex, and intimacy every single week. In our coaching call, I think it comes up. A wife, at least one wife, is bringing it up almost every single week. So it can be powerful too to know you're not alone.
Yes.
And to also learn from each other's coaching and just each other's journeys. That can be really helpful too, because sometimes we think we're the only ones that are going through this, and that can be really painful in and of itself. So you're not alone. We're here to offer support. We love you, and we've walked through this ourselves, and we know that God wants this goodness for you too, and we want to walk you into enjoying all that. So we hope this was open, honest enough for you, and we will see you next week.